Hi, Jeevitha. Good evening, and thanks for joining us. Before we take up the show stage and everything, this is Indwin Joel, Senior Manager, People Development, Anubon Technologies, your host for the day. This is our episode 13, where we have Ms. Jeevitha, Head of HR from Capitus, and sponsored by Sapient HR and Leadership Lens. Sapient HR, it's a global HR consulting firm based out of Chennai for the global people. We are into HR consulting services, which is into like you may look at like recruitment or policy or posh compliance governance, you name it, we have it in our portfolio. That's what is Sapient HR all about. Local entity for the global market across. And this episode is a special one for Leadership Lens, where we are completing into the 2 weeks. 12th episode's gone across, and this is the 13th episode for us. And before we deep dive into Miss Jeevitha, a small introduction about Leadership Lens is about how do we portray ourselves in front of others. That's about the lens part. It can be either convergent or divergent, but we're looking at leaders, how uh, capacitative are they in the sense of leading roles across. And this is about formal voices from them which lead into what's their journey about, what's their learning, and what's the small talks they have which can be embedding for the students or HR executives or senior HR officers or CHROs across. So this is a podcast series to help people have a filtered talk, not a filtered talk, but a genuine talk about conversations which lead to great conversations, because we are looking at impacting the HR community, not only the HR community across in India, but also at the global front. So when you look at this podcast after the live telecast being uploaded into YouTube, please do like, comment, and facilitate for more people to learn across. Miss Jeevitha, before your formal introduction, I will share a formal video bite about Miss Jeevitha, and we'll take the session across. Thank you, Jeevitha, for your patience listening. We are happy to have you on our episode 13, presented by Sapient HR for Leadership Lens. Thank you, Jeevitha, for the profound introduction we have. But we know we would have said very little things about you from the video presentation, having your diverse portfolio. We would, before we start into the topic, we would like you to have a small introduction about yourself, which was not there in the video.
Oh, thank you. My name is Jeevitha. So, I head the people and culture at Capitus. So, my journey was a little unconventional. I completed my engineering, did not do my MBA, and then moved into development, and from there into HR. And I am based out in Chennai. So, I work for a US based fintech organization.
Thank you, Jeevitha, for that quick round of review and discussion about your profile setting. So, our topic for today, which Ms. Jeevitha would be facilitating, is why employees stay and why they leave. So, this is the topic for today, where Jeevitha will share light about various discussion pointers. So, the first question for Jeevitha would be, in one sentence, if you want to say, why do employees really stay and why do they really leave? What would be that one statement?
So, employees stay if they have a sense of belonging, if they feel respected at their job, they'll definitely stay. And they leave when they seek it somewhere else. When they find that they're being valued elsewhere and they think they're not a part of this environment, and then they move on.
That's a sweet way of saying bring in belongingness into the organizations where we are looking at impact from AI and the digital
Yeah,
transformation.
that's true.
Okay, so if you look at the various segment of your viewership, if you think many, do you think that many students believe salary is everything? What's your experience on that? Is money the biggest retention factor, or is it just the myth?
I'd rather call it as a myth because nowadays what happens, AI is almost taken over the universities rather than going into the workplace structure. So what happens during your placement cell training, right? What is first instigated? There's your skill training that comes first, and then there's your soft skills training. And they even train you to do interviews. They basically undergo a couple of trainings for the interviews. And what happens? They are already skill ready. So the expectation for a fresher or for a student who's just stepping into the first job is basically, I have everything ready for the market, and what am I going to look at? So the common, the past generation definitely tells you that money is going to be the first sector, but I think it has stopped being that. Now people actually look at, a sense of belonging. Is this the right place for me to work? So that is something that has come up in the recent trends, irrespective of AI or not. Is it okay to stay with this organization? Is this a good offer to take up with the company? What do I read about the company? Do the company have good reviews? What are the reviews? People go through those reviews, right? So when you have look at a job portal, they go to the company review system, they look at Google reviews, they look at the Naukri reviews, they look at any other job portals reviews, even LinkedIn reviews, Glassdoor reviews, everything before they judge a company, correct? So based on that, I still think that money is just going to be a normal factor. It can be one of the factors, but I'm 100% sure that people have to take into consideration that the environment that they're going to work on, the culture that they want to be in, what they call as professional is definitely changed over the years.
Lot of fresh perspective on culture building, the organization, sustainability, and looking at the young generation voicing out their needs. And that's a great start to kick at the topic. And as you said, you have shifted yourself from being an engineer, then into a development role, and then into the HR leadership. So, looking back at your journey, what made you stay in certain roles and move on from others?
So my journey, like I said, was very, very unconventional. So I started off in engineering. I did spend 2 years in development. So I was in as a developer. I was getting a great feedback. The job was good, well paid. I was getting good feedback. The only problem was I felt that that was not my pace. Basically, there was a passion, there was a curiosity to go even far better. So that's when I started to realize that systems are eventually going to grow. They're going to grow in the future when the AI is going to take over all of this. The rumor mill was already spinning when I was starting my career. So considering that phase, what I decided is the most complex system of handling stuff is going to be humans. So that's how I, moved my transition from the technology perspective into studying and working with people. And that has definitely been a passion. And I do not regret that idea. I actually, embrace that idea to have worked with people and to have been here till now.
No, I will sympathize and empathize with that statement as well, because being myself from the engineering background and then being in the non-conventional field, I've not worked as a developer, but I had a clarity in my mind saying, you sitting in front of Orkut, at our ages you had Orkut,
Yeah.
sitting in front of Orkut and chatting with your friends is something different, and you coding for Orkut or Google is something not my cup of tea. So that transition was very much clear, and I like the way how you have approached at your life journey, transferring from engineering to development and then into the HR space, where it end of the day it boils down to your relationships and how do you communicate, because human relation, HR is not only about human resources, but it's also about the relationship, the empathy, and the connection you have. So deep diving into that, so we also have a question saying like, usually we have a statement where the HR gets burned out saying employees don't leave companies, they actually leave managers or cultures or unclear growth paths. So what do you feel is the reality check over there?
It's actually a combination, if you ask me, because what happens? Let's take a scenario, right? If there's going to be a bad assistant manager in a very, very good company with a great culture, you can still stick around, right? And vice versa. It's not a very culture-based company, but you have a great manager to guide you, who's going to give you everything, and then you'll definitely stick around for that person, right? The loyalty definitely matters. But when the manager, the culture, the organizational growth, and everything becomes a question mark, that's when we basically are mentally burnout, right? You don't know what to do. You're stuck. You feel stuck. You don't know what to do. And that definitely adds to your psychological insecurity. That's when we, start to look out. And that will probe a question, sense of belonging is not there. So basically, what will happen is you will question yourself whether this is the right place. And that's how the resignations come into picture. I don't think it is anymore about the hike or the title or the industry that you're going to go in, because the base question is going to be what prompted you to even look out of the organization.
Bringing in prompt engineering to the prompt of why do you want to leave the organization. Great insights about bringing AI into the dimension. So from this questions relay on the answers which you have put up, I'm trickled down to a question like, what do you think would be the top three things employees will look today that were very different 10 years ago?
So when I started my career, let's take my example. So I've got what 15 years of experience. So when I started my career, I was looking at a stability, the designation and the pay. All three of them were a good combo to characterize yourself in the society, saying, "Hey, you know what? I joined this organization. I work like this, and this is my pay." Right. So I think that era has definitely changed. Right. Talking about people entering the new workforce, what they look at is that the stability has now moved on to more like a psychological safety, just like how I said, right? The insecurity. Do I belong here? The sense of belonging. And then your appraisals. Let's talk about the pay. So the pay structure used to be what was defined by the government, right? What we got 10 years back and 15 years back is now completely different. We're talking about perks, we're talking about incentives. We are really giving them a continuous, growth in terms of not just the pay, but also in terms of learning, a succession plan. Everything is in place. The growth is not just in numbers anymore. It's about building an individual, building your employee within the organization. I think that's the second point that an employee will definitely look in an organization. And next, you talk about the designation, the perks, the promotion cycle, right? So now that has definitely changed. The titles don't matter anymore because you've got hundreds of managers in an organization, you've got hundreds of AVPs, VPs. India is now standardizing titles across organizations, right? So what are we looking at in an organization? The purpose and progress. What is the purpose of having this title and how do I be different? So if you look at the purpose and the sense of belonging is going to be the third point that will ensure the psychological safety, that will also ensure that we're giving them a right growth in terms of, soft skills, in terms of the compensation, in terms of making them believe that we are looking after them. But that's what human relations are all about, right? You talk about employee engagement, and all this can now be measured in AI. You've got systems to do it. And what is the role of HR? We have to put in processes and we have to upscale the processes to make sure everything is addressed.
That's a way ahead of journey across. You put it in very simple terms. I think Maslow's theory is the referencing where I can learn from, like the basic needs are being taken care. You're looking at psychological safety, then you're looking at engagement and across, and you're looking also at few things like the purpose, the belongingness, and when these two are being imbibed across, you're looking at a transformation journey, and that transformation comes with the right growth. So
Right.
it's a wonderful way to put across like how things have changed and evolved about the multi generational workforce which is at stake at different organization. So beating into the question again, so you also mentioned about the culture and the stress and everything. So can a strong culture compensate for high pressure, fast growth, or ambiguity? What's your take on that?
Pressure, again, it is going to be on the right sense. Again, it all circles back to the sense of belonging, right? So let's say, assuming your organization goes into a merger. So what will be the first rumor that will come out? Hey, people are going to capsize. That is only the first thing that people are going to think, right? If you don't be transparent about what you're going to do in that phase, no, that's where you look up to the leaders. You actually ask them to, send out a town hall or arrange a meeting. You ask them to come, tell them what is happening. If not, what happens? The rumor mill starts, and then people assume that the merger is happening. They're going to chuck people out. So that kind of sense of belonging, right? I think that pressure has to be addressed in the right way, and that's the right pressure, right? When you actually tell people, "Hey, we're going into a merger because we have grown, and we want to acquire that company out of good interest, and that company is not acquiring us." So that's the level of transparency, and that pressure is actually the right sense, if you ask me, because everything that is addressed on a transparent level, right? So the pressure is something that you can expect, and people will take it in a right sense.
It brings a spotlight on the conversation, saying open communication, open feedback is what takes it across. And feedback has to be positive feedback or feed forward, so that the communication stays in the line. So I think I'll take the concept of engineering. You have a process in place. As you said, the system is in place, means the process is well set, but you have an input and an output. So if your output is not matching into your input, we need to have a feedback mechanism, and that rolls it across into the process to ensure the right fitment is there. And I think this is what our young generation is also vouching for. They are ready to
Yes,
take the bullets, but only thing is for whom and for what.
correct. That is true.
So so bringing into that, I had two things which is very critical things you have brought into the discussion. One is the intention and the transparency, because you always say it's about transparency, it's about forward, or it's a two-way handshake from the both
Yes.
employer and the employee perspective. So it's a great perspective you have brought in about bringing everyone on the same table. And before I vouch into the next question, I just wanted to know: do you watch movies?
I do.
Okay, okay. Because I usually get hints from my friends saying you like me taking a lot of references from the movies. So I'll take a reference from the movie, Tamil movie called as Ennai Arindal, where Ajit marks a demarcation to his so-called friend Arun, saying, "In the code ku munadi neenga nallavanga, in the code ku pinadi neenga you're going on the wrong side." So what he depicts, for the people who don't understand Tamil, there's a very thin line between right and wrong, and where do we draw a line as a HR professional is about bringing in transparency, bringing in the right intentions, and bringing in change in somebody's life, because HR is not about only about relationships and intention, it's also about life changing decisions for people across.
That is true. Referring back to the liner that you mentioned, if you look at it, the purpose is the same, right? So if you look at that movie, basically both of them were friends together. What one person sees as right is not what the other person sees as right, right? So again, the intention is what serves the purpose. The purpose is right. I'm sure the world is gonna, acknowledge what you're doing. It just reflects back to the alchemist, right? Basically, when you want something, the world will definitely conspire to get what you want.
Putting into the line to what agriculture and farmers do, what you sow is what you reap.
What you read, yeah.
And bringing another dimensional perspective, because there are two engineers on this podcast today. um, every coin has two dimensions. One is the head and the tail. Both
Yeah.
has to be together, then only it's a coin, otherwise nobody has a value. Can what I mentioned was every coin has two sides.
Yes.
One is a head and the tail, and both has to be in sync. Otherwise, if both flip across separately, nobody has a value. That value
That is
comes
true.
with being togetherness. So the intention, the transparency, the purpose, everything brings together to what was the main purpose to bring everybody together. So I think that brings into the perspective of every business is for profit making entity, and what's the purpose behind, what's the motto behind, what was the, instead of putting it across as a motto, I can say what was the problem the business entity was looking at solving. So I think a lot
Right.
of fresh perspective about challenges, how to bring in some transparency, purpose, and everything. Okay, so when we look at all those things across with high pressure, growth, and ambiguity and everything, so we have the next generation, the younger generation, looking at like hybrid work, flexibility, mental wellness, belongingness, all. So these are all not becoming us expectations, but these are the reality checks now. Or do you think this is also a part of employee benefits, or it should be or not be? What's your take on that?
So, see, the current generation, like I said, they've moved away from stability. So, if you look at a recruiter, basically someone from HR who's working every day with a Gen Z crowd, let's say Gen Z crowd, what happens is if you go through their resume, they don't care about stability because they don't have that stigma, right? So, back like 7, 8 years back when I was in recruitment, if you look at it, I had to screen a profile based on the stability. The stability, the average stability between what, 3 to 4 years sitting in an organization. Only then I had the mindset to learn, hey, this guy or this person had to go through the complete organization for 4 years to understand even what the company is doing. So that's a bias I had. So look at the current generation. I don't think it's there anymore. They don't have that stigma. Well, so what they look at is the psychological safety. Is this the right place for me to work? That'll be the first question. And they do not have the fear of moving away from that place if it doesn't suit them. So if you ask me the career progression, right, the way they measure it and the way I see it is completely different. And you cannot call that a perk anymore. Hybrid work, your mental healthness, talking about flexibility options, hybrid work options. What is in it for me? That bold question is something that I think we have to embrace and start changing to bring in more adaptable organizations. So I think that's where we need to change our mindset and then say, hey, we should be adaptable, just like how AI is adapting. I think humans also need to adapt to the new era. And that's my conclusion. I rest my case there.
That's a great way to put, but I come from a generation where it always talked about flexibility and everything. And when you look at my profile, in my current organization, I've been spending around 4.5 years now, close to 5 years of my tenure with Anubhav Technologies. But if you look at my previous gigs across, I'll say gigs because I've not worked for any entity more than 1 year or 1.5 years. So I'll say I was ahead of my time when we looked at stability and everything. And sorry, being from the same HR fraternity, I had a lot of HR friends or fellow colleagues who were very skeptical about taking my profile into their organization, looking at the so-called stability perspective. See,
That's true.
what I used to say to them is, give me a job and let me perform it, and then get me a salary. It's about perspective, how to put in across.
Right.
And I would say, see, we are also looking at stability. We do need that for an entity to sustain and look at stability and everything. I respect that, but we are also looking at different life journeys and expectations. So
Yeah.
rightly said about the different scope. We are looking at like people at different life journeys had different needs. So when we look at our parents, they had a single job and they sustained with the organization. And now we, with some kind of support across the spectrum, we could skip into different roles across. And now our next generations are looking at not stability, but what is in for me. So that's a right way to put it, like what's the transformation they are looking at, and what's the business case they are solving, what's the kick. I think the Tamil movie, I don't remember the Tamil movie name, but I think the Hindi movie Kick had a reference. Salman Khan's movie Kick, it has like he wants to do something which gives him euphoria of thoughts or
Yeah.
euphoria of things across. So that's the kick you are looking at. In Malayalam, you can say the lahari, or the way you take it things across.
Yeah, that is true. Look at it from this perspective, no? So what happens is on a, let's say, on a psychological perspective, every life has a purpose, right? So when the purpose is lost, that's when you actually figure out that you're confused, you're stuck, and you don't know where to go. And if you relate that sentence to the organization that you work with, you will actually feel that. If you guide the employee on the right purpose, right, give he or she or they a right purpose and tell them where they need to be and guide them on the right path, I'm sure they're going to stay because the other perks are going to be already there, right? They're already changing that environment to accommodate a lot of new requests. And the employee is going to feel honored to actually work with you. So that is something I would, the purpose is going to serve everywhere. It's more like a universal truth, right? We just don't see it eye to eye. We just say that the life comes with a purpose, and then we don't put it to an ideation in the work that we do, and then we treat it as two different entities, and now that's different.
No, I think you brought in a perspective of like there has been now with the gig economy in place and everything. There's a very thin line. The same
Yeah.
movie reference, I'll take it like very thin line and very thin line between the professionalism and the personal life. So it's always a take on your personal and your professional ethics and moral, and how do you pitch it across to the environment. And I think when you take the same movie as a reference, even Ajit had this journey across to look at transformation of how do he takes it across.
Yep.
So he
Yep.
also went on a journey of rediscovery and looking at what's the purpose in his life. So rightly said, so HR is not about relationships. We didn't talk about what's the culture, this and that, but we are now looking at the career advisors or capacity builders, or when you look at a competency of helping them out.
That's
And I
true.
think we also now play another hat of being the listening act as well, because now there are so many stressed out people and they always like to come back to HR. And being from the industry, I think we also get our own voices across from the community across, saying like what's in best for the HR as well. So what's your take from the we were looking at from the employee perspective. Now can we look at from the HR perspective, what's in perk for them in this kind of an environment?
So, circling back to the purpose criteria, what happens is when an employee is feeling valued and when they get that purpose, and rephrase it this way, let's look at a fresher. So they're already skill ready and they're already system savvy, if you look at it, because they practice the systems. I remember doing my Python course when I stepped into my first job. And Python is now embedded in the ninth standard of CBSE schools right now. So they're already system savvy. You give them a new phone, you give them anything that is new that is on a system, they can figure it out in like half an hour. They don't even need a training. They can quickly do it on their own. So how do we leverage that as an organization? You bring in the up-to-date systems, up-to-date tools, and give it to them, and they will actually play in that, right? So how does an organization achieve what they want? They bring the business case, they break it down into smaller parts, they give it in terms of tools and get the work done. And when the energy is already there in the Gen Z crowd, right? So basically, all you have to tell them is give them something new to work on, and they'll definitely jump on it to get things moving. And you give them something new, you add a value to their everyday profile. That's something that will pick their curiosity, and that is something they will take as a trust because you trust that employee to solve that business case problem, right? And if it doesn't get solved, you're going to hold a team meeting. You have your manager to go to, you have your leader to go to. And where is the HR's place this year is basically bringing in the right talent, evaluating right measures. You have your employee, you have your manager, you have your leader. And what do we work on? We work on capability building, rightly said. So you work on your capability building for your employee, understanding the business problem. You work on the manager to handle both your leader and the employee in two different cases, and then the leader to break down the business problem into smaller pieces so that a new employee can understand what the organization is going through.
That's a wonderful way to pitch in across about the value creation across the chain. And I think you had subtly talked about few things which is not directly imbibed. When you look at itself the HR's journey, we
Right.
as the HR started as a personal department across in a manufacturing setup, from there to human resource management, then into human resource development, then into human capital management, then it's now always about the experience, what kind of experience you can bring in. So the capability comes with what kind of experience you can give and what kind of values you bring. But what another thing which trickles down to my mind was about the pressure and the right pressure. And I think I would like to bring in a case of like your pencil lead is also made of carbon, and your diamond is also made of carbon. So what pressure it goes through transforms the journey. So what's your take on that?
So again, on the right pressure part of it, right? So it happens in your life too, not just an organization's perspective. We go through stressful situations, and how do you maneuver it? How do you come out of it matters, right? End of the day, you maneuver. You find a way to work out of it. But why do you do it? Again, the purpose of why do you want to maneuver it? Why not just let the stress pass over you and probably behave like someone who's lazy, who does not even take care of yourself? So that's the sense of purpose, right? That's the drive that you have inside. That's the passion that will actually let you through that pressure situations, right? The passion that will let you know that this is the right pressure for you to go on, and after which you're going to burn out. And that right pressure will actually bring in the teamwork, because you know the right sense, because you know the line, right, where you're going to burn out when need to ask for help, and when you have to rely on others. I think I look at pressure at a very different perspective. I look at it as something like an eye opener, where you'll get different perspectives of people who are going to work with you, who are going to guide you in the right sense, and who are going to take you forward. I think that's going to be a different perspective for you.
From an
Disagree
engineering,
though.
that's a wonderful way to put at the timelines and the stress and looking at decoding it. For an engineering, it is P is equal to F by A. So how much of force you can put it on an area of interest, so that's perfectly fine. So from that I would like into deep dive into another topic. We're looking at the generation. So they always have they or I can say, like, we can put it like the industry always have a challenge with career visibility and career growth. So sometimes people don't leave because the growth is absent or something, but because they can't see it. So how do you put to these two terminology, career visibility versus career growth?
So I think career growth is more generic name. What you define as career growth is basically it can be something within the organization or something that you want to you aspire to become. But when it comes to career visibility, I think the visibility option is given within the organization. It starts with you entering the organization, right? If you don't know what your daily job is going to look like, or it is going to be different from what was given to you and what you are doing right now, and if you're not feeling valued, and if you're not being appreciated for what you're doing right now and what value add you bring to the table, I think that is when people start to look out. Like I said, right, nobody moves just for the title, for the money, not just for the location, any other stuff. What gave you the reason to actually look out is going to be the visibility that you don't feel in the organization. If I've not felt or seen in the organization, then I'm definitely going to seek somewhere outside where I feel I'm going to be valued outside. And that's the major reason for an attrition to happen within an organization. You can bring in fancy stuff. You can make the office colorful. You can bring in all the fancy onboarding kids, do the, the town halls, everything that says, hey, I have a picture perfect organization. But what really transpires is how the employee feels within the organization. And I think in the past few years, we've been talking about employee experience at a stretch, right? But look at it from a different spectrum. Organizations have now started to talk about customer experience. They've started to emphasize on customer experience on the leadership side, because they need to also understand what experience feels like, right? You design a product and then you release it to the market. You have to take a feedback from the customer who's using it. And we've been talking about employee engagement for a while. Look at it at a different system, right? So when we actually implement a program and we say that it is going to be beneficial for the employee, what we do, we send out surveys, we take feedback, and we translate that survey into a data insight. And that's something that the AI will already do it for you. But you should know the purpose of that program, right? So we cannot say, hey, you know what, the other organization did this, my previous organization did this, we should launch something new. There's going to be a purpose behind it. And that purpose is revalidated only when you have the feedback in place. And the right feedback will definitely give you the right sense of plan. People will definitely feel heard, because it may be a small thing, but that small thing is being noticed by employees, and that's going to bring in a great impact. And I truly, value on visibility rather than the growth part.
That's a great way to look at how both are interlinked and taken for granted by the people when they look at a fresh perspective. But you said about transparency and open eyes to look at the future. So future forward and taking it across. That's a well thought discussion across. I think from that point, I would like to take it on like from the HR lens. I think you did brought something about the early warning signs which people can look at when they're looking at. So from that perspective, moving ahead would be like you also mentioned now about engagement surveys, right? So how can HR leaders differentiate between feedbacks which are given and which can be like actionables from the survey data points?
Hmm. That's like I said, what happens? You have multiple systems to give you the survey, right? Let's take ChatGPT, Cloud, all of this. You feed the survey results into the system, it's going to tell you what you need to do. And that's what an AI does, right? So basically, looking at the survey results, if there are, multiple, let's take a Likert scale. That's a very common survey thing that we do, right? Strongly disagree, strongly agree, and then you have this disagree and neutral. So based on those responses, the Likert scale theory will hold good only if there is going to be a couple of options that you are looking to upgrade, not just for a new survey. Again, selecting the right kind of a survey is also equally important, right? When you have a textbook where you actually let an employee say how they feel about the new initiative or whatever stuff that you bring into, I think that's a conversation. They may be temporarily dissatisfied. They may have had a bad situation, a bad, a go through, and they would definitely, bring that out over the survey, right? Saying, hey, you know what, one employee would say that's a great initiative. I loved it because this is something that I did not have in my previous company. And there's another employee who's going to say, hey, this was handled very badly. I had to, follow up with a couple of people to get what I wanted. So again, when you look at that survey, right, when you feed it into a system, it's going to tell you the insights. But what are we going to do with the insights? It's the experience that comes from, right? After the survey is, coming out, the best thing to do is talk to the employees. Tell them that the survey is not just a system-driven stuff. That HR is always there to, initiate the conversation and understand what went wrong with that initiative. Data can tell you whatever you want, but at the end of the day, talking to them tells you why they made that comment, right? And they will definitely cite that incident that made them to feel very happy when they filled the survey, or neutral when they wanted to, disappear from the survey, or, give bad comments and reviews because they had a bad undergoing situation. I certainly feel that that's how you have to negotiate between the action and the survey results. And that's where the human pitches in, right? Basically, talking to a human is what gets you moving.
I think we need to take a call on a lot of AI agents and everyone, because we get a lot of calls now from the AI agents saying, "Hi, I'm from the bank and I'm giving a call and everything." But there's still a personalization being done. But I always feel give a call to your friend and say hi, and that takes the conversation ahead. So likewise, you said that kind of a bond the HR has to bring into the employees across to have that empathy and conversational things, because end of the day it's about how do we communicate and how do we take across the things, because data can't say a lot of things, but data can't see what was the emotion behind that data point. So
True, and
that's
it is also the basis of building a culture, right? You can run an organization with just people. You have people, you have systems, you have HR to run that for you. And that's not what an organization is anymore. When you want to build a culture, I think the important part is making people feel included in that culture. Going to everybody and asking just one simple question, right? Pick a coffee, go to that person, and then ask, how are you feeling today? And that one question will actually change their perspective on the organization. Trust me, it has worked for me.
No, I think that brings me to the question where you had a lot of tea breaks and chai pe charcha and the sutta breaks and everything when people had that kind of things. Now with people engaged into the system and everything, I think that's the shift of technology or the curse of technology, I'll say, because people were looking at that across. So
That's
you
true. That
work
is
in
true.
an entity and you go for a cup of tea outside, then you have the chit chat and the conversations and everything. I think a lot of business happens over the tea and the chai and the samosas and the bread pakoda. So that's what I'll say. And I think you also brought in the perspective of students' life cycle, how they have evolved and how they are looking at the transformation. That's a well-to-do point. And viewers, if you're listening to Jeevitha, do check her profile out and then connect with ma'am to know about her journey and how she had transformed a lot of people's journey. So from that intake, I would look at like. I think you also said you had also worked at technology, analytics, and everything. So, how do you pitch in for operations and transformation? So, what's your take on that?
So again, operations is basically a process, right? HR's process. That what I'll rephrase it this way. I'm going to put it in a very layman's term. Your MBA in HR teaches you what process is where and how do you put that into a structure, right? And then you have AI now to tell you that it's going to give you a template and then say implement it in this organization, and then you get the results what you have. So that is something that we are going to call as operations. But what really a transformation works? Let's take an example. Recruitment is going to be one of the major operations for building an organization, right? So how do you run recruitment? You basically run a campus drive if you're going to hire a fresher. You go into a lateral hiring, you do diversity hiring, and all of this is happening. And how do you screen it? There's going to be a process there. People are going to apply, and then you're going to pre-screen it. The HR goes through the profile, and then they speak to the candidate, and then there's going to be a technical evaluations. Sometimes there's going to be a behavioral evaluations, and post that the offer is released. And this is how the standard process of recruitment works. So this is again called as an operation because that's how machines work, right? Take a manufacturing sector. What goes in comes out, and you know what are the components that's going to be there, and that's what is called as operations. So that's similar in HR. And how do you make out transformations out of it? Similarly, if you look at a tier one, tier two, and tier three organizations, what makes it different? Why are still people, looking at Google interviews? Why do they say that Google interviews are so strenuous that the first 7 rounds is basically just assessments? It takes the eighth and the ninth round to even talk to a person to, evaluate that technical capability, right? So that's where the transformation comes into a picture. We all look for a person to talk to, and that's something that is undeniable, right? Transformation comes from a recruitment perspective when you talk to a person. We have AI screening resumes right now. What are we doing about it? When you speak to a HR, what do we evaluate? When the human factor comes into a picture, we try to evaluate if the person is a right cultural fit for the organization, and also from the employee's perspective, from the candidate's perspective, will this person be a good fit for the current team? And will this person be scalable enough to feel that he or she is going to be valued in this organization? Are we able to, match what the candidate expects? It's not just the salary, the title, the role expectations and stuff. It's going to be more than that, right? We are talking about inclusion, diversity everywhere. So all of that is called transformation. You include all of those questions into the interview scenario, and you also tutor your managers to even ask such questions to make sure the sense of belonging starts during the interview process, right? You ask them to be more inclusive. You ask them to, look at a diverse set of answers to, not just the tech side of it. Look at adaptability. Look, they have a learning ability or not. Even if they may not know now, will they be scalable? Will we be able to give them a training and then be scalable? So that's a transformation, and that's where your operations turn into a transformative process.
A lot of perspective, a lot of insights, a lot of things to deep dive and digest as well for a lot of people, because that comes with a lot of experience, and that what personalized experience and and the quick bites of talks, that's what leadership lens is about, having a conversation across and let that conversation shape people's life. So from that, take a few quick bites of questions and you can give it a 2 line or a 3 line or agreement or disagreement kind of thing. So the bold statement for debate now would be: employees no longer build careers with companies, they build careers through companies. Agree or disagree, and why so? I'll repeat
That's
it.
an interesting question, but I definitely agree to it because we have
Okay.
moved away from the era where we offer careers. We don't. We offer a culture where people actually teach you how to run an organization, if you ask me. So that's how I'm looking at it. The adaptability is definitely grown. Every year we bring in new initiatives to accommodate new people, right? And every new initiative comes from some employee suggestion, and that's something that we need to acknowledge, right? So I definitely agree to the point that the careers are through companies. We're just one chapter.
Okay, so there are this book is still with a lot of chapters to be asked about. So the next chapter of question is: should organization focus on retaining everyone or retaining the right talent?
It's always about retaining the right talent, right? Because at one side you talk about not having a bias. The other side, if you retain the wrong people, they're going to pull down the passion and the force. And the right kind of people may not feel equipped to do that. So again, we talk about empowering high potential employees and stuff, right? And that moment, the retention is not open for everybody. We identify a fast track employee, we put them into a career progression, and then we give them multiple promotions. And that is what we are doing right now. So basically, it is retaining the right talent.
I think you pitched back to the concept of growth initiatives, career growth, and ensuring that growth is also visible across as a career visibility channel. So that's a perspective of connecting the dots. That's a challenge when we have engineers in the HR field,
Yes,
because they always like to question it and challenge the status quo.
that is true. That is very true.
No, I also have a challenge addressing to my fellow HR friends, because I always ask the question like, why is it done this way? Because from the engineering, it's always about the flow chart. What is the process? Where is the input? Where is the outcome? What is? And there are a lot of questions which engineering breaks into. So that principle helps across for deep diving it. So
True.
the
The
next.
logic is what we look at, right? At engineering, basically, it's the logic. You build a process based on logic. Because you look
And
at the input, you want this output, and you have to build a logic to even get what you want.
but sometimes the logic also gets a back banner when you are in the HR space, because sometimes it's more than the logic, it's about the emotion, and I think that's what HR makes the difference with the human touch, or I
I mean,
can say
that's where we have to bring in that balance, right? And one side you have to speak logic, and the other side you got to speak about empathy. You have to weigh the emotions of the employees. I
no,
think that's
so
where we bring in the balance.
so it becomes a challenge for everyone, because are you talking from the heart or are you talking from the brain?
Yeah, that's true.
That's a deep dive thing. So the book has more questions across. So is employee loyalty declining, or organization facing transparency or empowered workforce?
And I think we should call it empowered because, well, like I said, right, years back we were talking about stability, and now it's not anymore. People, that stigma is gone. Nobody talks about stability anymore, right? So I go, I fit in. I should wake up in the morning to feel ready to go to office. It shouldn't be like a burden, right? It should feel like, hey, I have a purpose. I have to go today. I have to finish all of this stuff, and that comes with a passion. And that curiosity is something that comes only with the empowered workforce. People who are tech savvy, people who are system ready, and people who are ready to jump the gun just because you have a new business problem. And I think it's great to work with an empowered workforce. I'd rather call them an empowered people because they are teaching us a new level way of building an organization and also building a culture which is adaptable for every generation.
It's a good perspective across to channelize it in that way. We stay grounded with empowering others. That's the other take to look at organizations across. Okay, so the next would be, if you could redesign the future workforce from scratch, what would you build differently to make employees genuinely want to say something?
Ah, that is all right. So let's say so people leave because of bad managers. That's a very standard truth, right? So basically, I'm going to talk there. Your manager selection again, an individual contributor, tech savvy. Think about AI, tech savvy. People know how to navigate in AI. They know how to build systems. They know how to code. They even know how to correct the code. They're not talking about individual contributors anymore. So when you give a promotion, I think when they not every promotion has to be a managerial one, and not every person is good at leading people. So I think the manager selection criteria needs to be personified. When you move from a manager to a leader and to a next level leader, I think that's where the succession planning has to be different from an individual contributor to a manager. We need to emphasize more on manager competencies and trainings before we make them ready to even step into that role. That's going to be the first thing that I'll do. Next is bringing in the visibility. Though we do succession planning and all of this is done, that's the duty of an HR, right? We have to enable the manager to start having that conversation because they are going to be the people who are going to meet them every day, tell them what's happening in the organization and what their role is going to be defined as. They get the first-hand information rather than from the CXO, rather than the HR getting it over an email, right? That's something we have to definitely admit. And from an HR standpoint of view, though I do not want the managers to take on every goal, we should start measuring business outcomes. That's what we are doing right now with AI, right? We talk about revenue, we talk about what goes in and comes out in terms of money. And in that space, while building a culture, we need to talk about the psychological safety. Psychological safety is going to be how transparent, how people are free enough to, come give, whether it is a suggestion or a problem or anything for that matter. I think that's where the surface level problems are addressed. If the transparency is not just at the leadership level, right? You cannot expect a CXO just look at one side and then say the CXO must be transparent and the employees can be either two. I think it has to be built across levels, and psychological safety also needs to be measured equally to a business outcome. Because that's where you measure your productivity and efficiency, right? So when you tie it to an efficiency, an employee who feels trusted and respected is going to deliver well. They don't disappear, right? So they're going to be in every meeting. They will give you suggestions to run things efficiently, and that's how you measure it.
I think you touched on the next question as well with regard to how do we measure it and how do we take it across in an organization. And you also brought in the perspective of HR is not transactional, it's about transformative with understanding the business as we are given the space on the leadership table itself. And how do
Yeah, that is
we
true.
how do we talk sense from the business, and how do we talk about the revenue, how we talk about the P&L and EBITDA, and end of the day it's what comes, what you give is what you come back. So that transformation is also being sorted across. I think you touch base now on AI. So the question is, in the age of AI automation and rapid skill shifts and all those things, will employees stay longer with organization which offers learning security or job security?
The job security, I don't think, like I said, the stigma is over, right? So it doesn't make sense to talk about job security. But learning security, yes. How do you provide a succession planning in terms of, revamping their career? How do you build that capability and the capacity to hold that employee in that position and to, renovate them into a new position and elevate them, give them a visibility and a path? I think that's what matters. Every organization has an LMS now, right? We talk about continuous learning, growth. Every organization has an LMS. Every organization does trainings and stuff. How do you differentiate from every organization is basically the path that you show to an employee. So I think that's where the learning security comes into.
That's a fresh perspective, and I think what I forgot to discuss was about like when you looked at the technology perspective, because we both are currently working in a tech firm. A developer, to your take only, it's not a question, but it's a synergy or a synagogue across to a thought. Like somebody joins as a developer, as a software engineer or something, he can go into two roles across in the future, either as a individual contributor, as a technical architect, and if he goes into the manager cadre with people management skills, he becomes as a engineering architect, where he looks at the transformation of ensuring or engineering manager. An engineering architect or technical architect is an IC role, but an engineering manager role is a people management role where he
People
has a
management, yes.
team across. So that's the thought I had when you talked about the technology capabilities and the skill analysis, and then looking at the succession planning and everything. So that's a like practical demo of things across from your perspective. So that's a right chords.
It is. If you look at the current scenario, I don't think technical capabilities are always a question. At least now in this era, we don't look at technical capabilities anymore, right? You put across assessments, there's going to be technical discussions. And I know organizations who still invite, the candidates for a face-to-face discussion because they don't trust the Zoom interviews or the Teams interviews anymore. Because that's how the tech capability is looking at both ends. Look at it. We can build codes from scratch. Even HR, who's not a coder, who does not have anything to do with technology, right? So we can code from the build. We can actually build it from scratch using the AI. So I think the tech capability is not a question anymore.
Okay, before we go into run up on the conclusion and everything, for students, for HR professions, managers, and future CHROs or people experience officer or people chief people officers watching this later on YouTube, what is your one timeless principle on creating workplaces where people don't just work, they truly choose to stay? What's your take on that?
Purpose and progress. Just two little sweet words. Because if you take away all the policies, the perks, the programs, everything, if you take out what is left, is going to be the sense of purpose. And again, the progress that you've made. Right. So if you look at, let's say, a classic example, let's talk about insurances, right? Initially, when we had government-led insurances, it used to be just ESI, right? We spoke about employee state insurance, and where are we right now? We are talking about well-being first. We're talking about adding even OPD insurances as an additional cover. So that's where the progress comes. The purpose is there. The purpose is not just to insure an employee. The purpose is to ensure their future. So that comes into a picture. I think the principle that I would rely on is going to be your purpose and progress, because that's the ground for building a culture. You can actually get more people to work on an organization, but what keeps the employee retained in an organization? It's the culture, and culture basically redefine organizations. So it's always the purpose and the progress that we bring in.
I'll tweak your answer into like we are all people managers, so people has to look at process, and this
Yeah.
process will bring in purpose and progress. So that will look at a stake at planet. So with that it comes to sustainability. So we are looking at responsible business practices across at all workplaces. So that's a round of applause for Jeevitha to bring in those kind of fresh perspectives to the discussions. So we are at the crux of concluding part of the discussion, Jeevitha. So do you have any take or something before I sum up the discussion which we had? You want something to say for our audience, or something to say for anybody who are listening to you maybe now, or when the episode is being uploaded into YouTube? We'll be happy to hear your one take or a quick bite for them when they are lost or something. What should be their take when they have to choose an organization or something? I don't know the question, but how can you give an answer to the question? I'll leave it to you to take it up for the audience.
So relevant to the topic that we've been speaking, right? Why employees stay and why they leave. It's always a blame game, right? When it comes to the HR, the organization definitely says that we have not done enough to retain that person. And when you look at the employee's perspective, they're going to say that the organization did not heed to my expectations. Instead of doing the blame game, I think that is where the HR has to serve purpose. So I would like to redefine HR whenever you feel low, right? Whenever you work for an organization, setting up culture, setting up, talking about processes everywhere. I think you need to, take a step back and look at a purpose. And what I would like to redefine HR is people with purpose. You have people with process. We have process, we have structures, we have everything with us. And what is that we don't have is a purpose behind that process. Why do we have that process in place? Because it is just there. It has been lying there for years. But what is the purpose of having it if it does not serve any need to the employee or to the organization? And that is where I definitely want all of us to, take a step back and think why, which, and where is the purpose leading to? Because AI is going to give in the systems. AI is going to redefine the way we work. It is going to redefine everything. What cannot be redefined is basically how we work, how humans work. And that can be redefined only with a purpose, with a logic behind it. And that is something I would request all HR folks who are watching this, or all HR folks facilitating this, right, to serve with purpose. And that's what makes it very interesting. And that is going to be the passion and the curiosity that will make you get out of bed to go to work. trust me, that will definitely give you a passion to, drive your life. So it's always people with, remember, we are all people with progress.
That's a fresh perspective. So before I sign off with the commentary on the conclusion and everything, but for people, you can always have pivot with purpose. So look at pivoting with a purpose in your life, because that's what will take you to multiple places. And I think Jeevitha had brought in a lot of peace today. So purpose, peace, and then progress, then possibilities, adaptabilities, and then purpose, planet, and switching across the different p's across. But end of the day, it boils about people, and how people centric are you in your decisions. That's what will impact the organization. So if there is one thing I would like every student, manager, or HR professional, or a business leader watching this podcast to remember is, people rarely stay because of a policy, and they rarely leave because of a single event. They stay because they feel seen, valued, trusted, and connected to a purpose. So that's the take which Ms. Jeevitha had been signing off from the beginning of our discussion. And being a movie bluff, in Tamil cinema, you have a movie called as Anbe Shivam, which reminds us that humanity is at the center of every journey. And for our Hindi audience, in Hindi cinema, you have Swadesh, which teaches across that people give their best when they feel they belong to something meaningful, and workplace is no different. And the future of retention is not about holding people back. It's about giving them reasons to move forward with you. When organizations invest in trust, growth, learning, and genuine human connections, employee don't just work there, they choose to stay there. Because at the end of the day, employees may join a company for a role, but they stay for the experience, the relationships, and the impact they create together. Here I would like to tag along the example of the Tata Group. During the terror attack in Mumbai, we had a lot of people from the Tata organization shed their lives. The purpose was different, but they put up their lives on stake for the people and the purpose. So that's the kind of people you're looking at. They stay across for an organization when there's a purpose in that journey. And what I would like to conclude is, build workplaces where people don't count the days they have spent, but the memories, the growth, the value they have gained, and the journey to cherish ahead. Because today is, what do you say? Yesterday. Okay, let's put it this way. Past is history, future is mystery. Live your moments today, because it's a present today. So that's a present, and take that as your present, and with a purpose. So this is Indwin Joel signing off for every of our watchers across, people watching us across in YouTube later. Wishing you a great day, and I would like to thank Ms. Jeevitha for her valuable time from both Sapient HR and Leadership Lens to grace the occasion with your presence for this topic. And it's been great communicating across with you. So wishing you also a great day, and to our viewers, stay connected across and follow us on all our social medias for the next episode, and we'll be out with this episode shortly. So have a great day.
Thank you for having me. I think it's a wonderful conversation, to look at how employees see us, and it is also the other side of the conversation, right? How HR sees the employees. I think I have given some pointers which the viewers would definitely, feel valuable to take. And my humble request is build the workplaces where you would love to stay. I think that's where it starts, from the sense of I, right? So please build workplaces that are worth staying in, and that's the only, the benevolent suggestion that I would like to put across before we sign off. Thank you, Indwin, for having me. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Jeevitha, once again, and thank you all for watching us today.